Billionaire women bets $1 million no one can calm her horse. Little boy with autism proves her wrong. The crisp wind whipped through the sprawling fields of Redstone Ranch, carrying a tense silence that seemed to hang heavier than the storm clouds gathering overhead. At the center of the paddock, a massive chestnut stallion named Titan snorted, his muscles rippling beneath a glossy coat streaked with dust and sweat. His hooves pawed the earth, sending up clods of dirt as he reared against the heavy leather. Reins, eyes wild with a fierce, untamed fire. From the edge of the crowd, a sharp voice cut through the tension. $1 million, declared Victoria Chandler, her voice cold and unwavering, piercing through the murmurs like a knife. She stood tall in a tailored riding jacket, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, eyes gleaming with challenge. "I'll pay anyone brave enough to calm Titan down for 5 whole minutes." The crowd, ranchers, trainers, and wealthy spectators from all over Wyoming, exchanged uneasy glances. The horse wasn't just a beast. He was a legend. Wild and unbreakable. Titan had tossed off every rider, shattered every trainer's confidence. Victoria's bet wasn't just about money. It was about pride. As murmurs spread like wildfire, no one stepped forward. The challenge was clear, the stakes enormous. All except one. Unnoticed by most, a small boy clutching a worn baseball cap in his trembling hands moved quietly toward the paddock. 11-year-old Ethan Marshall, who rarely spoke above a whisper and had never before stepped outside his small town in Nebraska, felt his heart pound in rhythm with the restless stamp of Titan's hooves. The boy's eyes, steady and calm, locked onto the raging stallion with a quiet determination few could understand. Ethan's mother, Susan, called after him anxiously. "Ethan, wait! It's not safe!" But the boy didn't stop. He reached into his pocket, fingers closing around a small wooden whistle, carved long ago by his grandfather, the only piece of home he carried with him through the chaos of his world. Victoria smirked, barely hiding her amusement as Ethan approached. "A kid? Really? This will be over before it starts." But Ethan said nothing. He knelt down near the fence, took a deep breath, and blew a soft, steady note on the whistle, an ancient melody his grandfather taught him, one whispered in the quiet moments between storms. The wildness in Titan's eyes flickered, just for a moment. The crowd held its breath, because sometimes the softest voice holds the greatest power. Ethan Marshall wasn't like the other kids in his small Nebraska town. At 11 years old, he carried the quiet weight of the world on his shoulders, a world that often felt too loud, too fast, too overwhelming. Diagnosed with autism at a young age, Ethan found comfort in simple routines, gentle sounds, and the steady rhythm of his small hometown life. His voice was soft, his movements deliberate, and his gaze often distant, but beneath that calm exterior was a heart full of courage few could see. Raised by his single mother, Susan, Ethan's life hadn't been easy. His father had left when Ethan was barely 2, overwhelmed by the challenges of raising a son who didn't quite fit the usual mold. Susan worked long hours at the local diner, always fighting to provide for Ethan, making sure he had the stability and love he needed to thrive. Despite her exhaustion, she never doubted her son's quiet strength. Ethan's world was built on small rituals. The worn baseball cap he never parted with, the wooden whistle carved by his grandfather, a man who'd taught him how to find peace in music and nature. His grandfather's lessons were etched deep in Ethan's heart: patience, understanding, and the power of calm. Though Ethan rarely spoke in crowds, he had a way of connecting with animals that baffled others. Horses, dogs, even birds seemed to sense his gentleness. For Ethan, the world was less about words and more about quiet moments. Moments where he could listen, observe, and somehow make sense of chaos. Today, standing at the edge of the paddock, with Titan thrashing before him, Ethan felt something stir deep inside, a connection he couldn't explain. This was his moment. Not for fame or money, but for a chance to show that quiet could be just as powerful as roar. Ethan stood just a few feet away from Titan, the massive black stallion, muscles tense, eyes wild with fear and frustration. The crowd buzzed nervously, watching the billionaire's expensive bet hanging in the balance. No one had dared come close. Everyone assumed the horse was untamable, but Ethan's gaze never wavered. He didn't speak. He didn't shout. Instead, he took a slow, steady breath, feeling the crisp autumn air fill his lungs, grounding him. With careful steps, Ethan approached Titan, each movement deliberate, unhurried. The noise of the crowd faded, replaced by a quiet stillness between boy and beast. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden whistle, the one his grandfather had carved years ago. He held it loosely in his hand, almost like a secret between them. Titan's ears twitched. The stallion's body, once rigid with tension, began to soften. Ethan didn't try to force calm. He simply stood beside the horse, matching his slow, steady breath. Then, with a gentle puff, Ethan blew into the whistle, sending out a soft, melodic note. Barely more than a whisper carried on the breeze. The sound seemed to ripple through the paddock. Titan's restless movements slowed, his eyes locking onto Ethan's with a sudden, unexpected trust. The crowd gasped as the stallion lowered his head, his wild gaze melting into something calm and open. For the first time in weeks, Titan stood still, quiet beside the boy who didn't need words to be understood. As the stunned crowd watched Ethan and Titan stand side by side, a ripple of murmurs spread through the stands. But the billionaire, Veronica Sterling, wasn't ready to concede. Her sharp eyes narrowed, lips curling into a smirk that barely concealed her frustration. This was her pride on the line. $1 million bet, not just money, but reputation hanging precariously in the balance. Veronica strode forward, her heels clicking against the wooden arena floor, each step echoing like a challenge. "Don't get too comfortable, kid," she said, voice icy but controlled. "That horse isn't tamed yet. You just bought yourself 5 minutes, not a miracle." Ethan didn't respond. His calm stayed unshaken. But inside, he felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on him. The crowd, once skeptical, now watched with bated breath, waiting to see if the horse would snap back to its wild ways or if the boy's quiet connection would hold. From the sidelines, a group of Veronica's associates began whispering doubts, throwing sideways glances at Ethan, questioning whether a boy with autism could really handle such a challenge. The tension thickened like a storm cloud ready to burst. A few skeptical ranchers even muttered under their breath that the horse would never be truly calm, that Ethan's moment was just a fluke. Titan's muscles twitched uneasily. Despite his temporary calm, the beast was still raw with fear and past trauma. Ethan sensed it, too. The stallion's ears flicked back, his nostrils flaring slightly, signaling the fragile peace might shatter at any moment. The external pressure, mounted, Veronica's words, the crowd's restless energy, and Titan's unpredictable nature all converged into a ticking time bomb. Ethan had to prove that this quiet boy's bond was more than a fleeting connection. It was the key to calming a tempest no one else could face. The stakes were higher than ever, and every heartbeat echoed with the unspoken challenge. Could Ethan hold steady against the mounting doubts and fears? Or would the wildness of Titan and the cruelty of the crowd tear the fragile trust apart? As the tension reached its peak, Ethan took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes fixated on him and Titan. The crowd's murmurs swelled into whispers of doubt and disbelief, but Ethan's gaze never wavered from the horse's dark, restless eyes. Slowly, he extended a hand, palm open, steady as a mountain, inviting Titan to choose peace. Titan hesitated, muscles taut like coiled springs, every fiber ready to explode into flight or fight. But then, something subtle shifted, a softening. In the stallion's stance, a slow blink, as if recognizing a safe harbor in Ethan's calm presence. The crowd gasped quietly, sensing the fragile breakthrough. Ethan didn't rush. He began to hum softly, a low, gentle tune that wrapped around the horse like a warm blanket. The harmonics, almost inaudible, carried a soothing rhythm that seemed to reach beyond sound, touching a deeper part of Titan's wild spirit. Step by careful step, Ethan edged closer, his voice never breaking, his eyes filled with quiet resolve. Then, the moment that silenced the entire arena, Titan lowered his massive head, nudging Ethan's outstretched palm with his muzzle. The crowd exhaled as one, a wave of disbelief and awe washing over them. The horse, known for snarling and snapping at every attempt to tame him, now stood still, chest rising and falling in sync with the boy's steady breath. Veronica Sterling's jaw tightened. Her expensive heels shifted on the ground as she realized. The $1 million bet was no longer a gamble, but a testament. Cameras flashed, capturing the rare, undeniable proof. A connection so pure and profound it transcended words. The little boy with autism had done what no expert, no trainer had. Managed, he calmed the untamable. As the applause died down, a heavy silence settled over the crowd. Veronica Sterling's gaze burned with a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect, but pride still clenched her voice tight. She stepped forward, trying to mask the sting of defeat behind a polished smile. "Well, it seems the boy has won this round," she said, her tone edged with challenge rather than concession. But not everyone was ready to celebrate. Some murmured skeptically, questioning if this moment could truly change anything about Titan's fierce reputation. The trainers whispered among themselves, unwilling to accept that their years of expertise had been outdone by a child's quiet patience. Ethan, however, remained calm, his eyes reflecting a blend of relief and quiet strength. He knew this victory was only the beginning. Outside the spotlight, he wrestled with his own doubts. Was this connection fragile? Could it survive the pressure and expectations now placed on him? Back at his small farmhouse, Ethan sat on the porch steps, Titan quietly grazing nearby. The boy traced gentle circles in the dirt, replaying the day's events in his mind. The roar of the crowd still echoed faintly, but here in the soft evening air, the world felt slower, gentler. Ethan's grandmother Sarah joined him quietly, offering a warm blanket and a knowing smile. "You did good, kid," she said softly. "But remember, real change takes time, not just for others to see you, but for you to believe in yourself." In that still moment, Ethan understood that his journey wasn't about the $1 million bet or the crowd's approval. It was about the steady bond he was building with Titan, a bond that would grow stronger through every challenge ahead, no matter how loud the world became. Days turned into weeks, and the buzz around Ethan and Titan didn't fade. It grew into something deeper. The once untamable horse, now calm and responsive, became a symbol of patience and understanding. People who had doubted the boy's quiet strength began to see beyond the surface, recognizing the power of gentle persistence. Ethan didn't seek the spotlight. Instead, he kept returning to the farm, to the simple rhythm of caring for Titan, and practicing every day. His confidence blossomed quietly, no longer tethered to proving others wrong, but rooted in the trust he'd nurtured with his horse. Veronica Sterling, too, found herself changed. The pride she'd carried began to soften, replaced by respect for the boy whose kindness and calmness had won what force and money never could. She quietly started supporting local programs for children like Ethan, inspired by the lesson that true strength often whispers rather than shouts. Years later, the story of the boy who calmed the billionaire's horse became a quiet legend in the community, a reminder that sometimes the most profound victories come not from grand gestures, but from patient hearts and steady hands. Ethan's journey left a legacy far beyond the arena. It was a legacy of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of connection, the kind that changes lives, one gentle moment at a time. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to smash that thumbs up and hit subscribe for more unforgettable, emotional, and viral true stories. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us, where in the world are you watching from?